All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Living the Dream podcast. Today on the show, we have Mark Booher, who is the host of the Pearl Snap Tactical podcast and the founder of Barritus Defense. Mark, how you doing?
Hey, man, I'm great. Thanks for having me on, Tim.
Of course, thanks for coming on the show, and we like to jump right in. So if you could start with just telling us a little bit more about yourself and what you'd like to do for fun, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, I was just some kid born in South Arkansas, out in the middle of nowhere, and grew up there and went through, the typical childhood that somebody in a rural country setting would go through, but always kind of had my plans. I loved where I'm from. I love how I grew up, but I kind of always had my plans to just do more, to go out and be more. So when I graduated high school, not long after, I went and joined the Army. And I've logged about 10 years in the Army as both in the active duty and on the National Guard component. Got to travel the world, see a lot of things, have a lot of awesome experiences. When I got out, I finished college, got my bachelor's, and went on to law school and was a deputy prosecuting attorney for 6 years. But somewhere I just still had that itch, still wanted to do some more running and gunning. So at about 2013, I started my business, Barritus Defense. So it's a security and training company, and we have or a security training and consulting company, and we've trained. I've done contracts with the Department of Defense, Department of Justice. I've trained individuals from the Fortune 500, done some consulting with companies, churches across the country. I've probably taught at 60 police departments across the country, and I've probably I don't know. I lost count, but probably I'm up to over 1,000 as far as training civilians in firearms and weapons tactics.
Wow, that's epic. And so
Yeah, well,
are you training people on like is it shooting better? Is it like the tactical side of things, or like positioning yourself, or how to look out for certain things? What is it like?
yeah. It's really all that entails. So if you look at it, I've kind of divided it up in three buckets. So on the law enforcement side, we do a little bit of investigation stuff, but mostly counter ambush and counterterrorism type things. Then you've got the church security element, which is everything from inspecting the campus to training the security teams and situational awareness, how to build the team, how to develop the duty rosters, and what are the duties of a security safety team. And that might have a firearms component too. And then with the civilians, it on the firearms and weapons tactics, it's exactly what you just said. I have trained everyone from airborne troops going to Afghanistan to grandmas who've never touched a gun before. So, and everybody in between. So it could be anything from just how to hold it, how to load it, to bounding out of vehicles and getting after it.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay. And tell us a little bit about the podcast.
So the podcast was just kind of like you. I'm a pretty busy guy, and I think the bane of busy people is just to add more busyness to to life. It seems like that's what we do. So
Yeah,
uh, to just try to expand our footprint and try to reach more people. I'd always been wanting to get into podcasts, but I'm not really a tech savvy kind of guy. But just decided, man, it was time to make that move. And so me and the guy, my business partner that does a lot of training with me, we started it, and it really just kind of coalesces around a lot of the training topics that we work on with firearms, weapons tactics, situational awareness, those types of things, trying to build that tactical education. But now we're pivoting. I mean, we're still doing those topics, but now we're just kind of pivoting off to some other topics that are a little broader in scope, that has to do with just mindset, overcoming adversity, finding the way to win, that kind of warrior philosophy mindset, those types of
yeah,
things that are also part of the culture that, he was a military guy, a special operations guy. So just part of the culture that we come from, um, that we want to share. You don't have to be in the military to learn those things. That's where we learn them. But I think there's kind of a dearth of that thought, or we've kind of lost sight of some of those things that I think all men used to be part of them, part of the culture that's just kind of been lost. I think we're suffering because of it. So we're trying to reintroduce people back to something that we used to always know.
I gotcha. Okay, and what do you do for fun? What's when you're not running a company, running a podcast? What
It's
was your recreation time?
Man, I'll tell you what, I really built my business around my interests. So a lot of times when I'm out training, when I'm out with people, that is my hobby. That was one of the reasons why I started it, is because I didn't have time to do that stuff. So, but other than when I'm not working on the business, I mean, working out, training, reading, spending time with my family and friends, and traveling. Those are my
Yeah.
big ticket items.
Yeah, I got you. It's weird because when you're a kid growing up, like I'm a pretty young guy, so I was a kid not too long
Mm.
ago. Um, but when you're a kid growing up, you think there's like so much to do, and there is a lot to do. But
Mm.
in the realm of leisure activity, there's not a ton. Like there's a couple of activities that you can do
Yeah,
pretty regularly where it's
yeah.
like, yeah, you can travel, yeah, you can spend time with friends and family, or you can like do a hobby you like, which is
Hmm.
typically either something
Yeah.
outside and sporty, or maybe it's something
Yep.
like artistic.
Yep.
Those are like a
Yeah.
couple of things you can do. And so it's just been funny because my wife and I have been like, what should we go do? What should we go do right now? And it's just like we live in Austin, Texas too, so it's like it's a good city for stuff. You know, there's live music
Yeah.
all the time, and there's
Yeah.
um, plenty of stuff to do. But we just find ourselves sitting there like, man, you know, there's really there's not much to
Yeah.
do.
I know I don't know. I think I agree with you. I think it's just something that as you get older and you have more responsibilities, you just realize how valuable your time is. And so when it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It's like once you do get free time and you've got, like you said, there's so much stuff to do, but you really, when it comes down and you commit to it, you realize, yeah, I really don't want to do that stuff,
Yeah,
or I don't want to really do this, even though I could. And then you're left with, well, what are we going to do? I
uh-huh.
know exactly what you mean. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
crazy. It's crazy. It's ironic, isn't it?
it
Yeah,
is. It is awesome. Well,
yeah.
tell us a little bit more about your motivation, man. What gets you up and keeps you going every day?
Man, I don't know. You might not find too many army dudes that talk like this, so it might kind of be odd, but to me, it's perfectly normal, right?
Uh-huh.
I really, I really believe that our purpose in life, I mean, once you get past any philosophies or religions or whatever, or no religion or whatever, I think that our purpose in life is to expand our consciousness. I
Hmm.
mean, if you that I think that really when you strip everything away, that is what our purpose on life, that is why we come into being. If you look at just when babies come into the world, that's really all that they're, once they get past the sleep, eat, phase, they start exploring their world, and they're happy, they're engaged, everything's a new thing. I mean, if you've ever had kids, I got two of them, and I mean, it was just amazing to watch them, you know so absorbed in the world, and to that's exactly what they were doing, is expanding their consciousness, growing from new experience and moving from being to becoming.
Yeah.
And and then the same thing you think in your childhood, when you were 5, 6, it's the same thing, to go out and explore your world, to play with your friends, to interact, to meet and do things. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about children, is that all they do is say yes to life.
Yeah.
And I think as we get older, we start taking on more baggage, we start taking on more constraints, and we kind of lose sight of that. We stop moving from being to becoming, and we kind of get stuck in kind of a stagnant stage of our life. We adopt just hyper routine, and we really become solidified in these comfort zones. And my mission for myself, and what gets me up, is to expand beyond those things, to really take myself beyond what I was, to become more. And so I do that through my training, and I do that through try to do that through my relationships, and to really just always try to push myself more and more. I didn't always think that way, but that's, the older I get, that's kind of what my, I guess, personal philosophy would be, that really that's why we're here, and that's what we should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so was it your kids that helped you make that shift, or was it something else as well?
Man, it's really hard to put my finger on it. It's just a culmination of several life experience and many years of of living, I guess, that kind of brought me to that point.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah,
Well, cool. I like that.
yeah.
Yeah, you don't hear a lot of army guys talk, but you'd be surprised. Army guys that are coming on podcasts, a lot more of them do talk like that than
That might be true. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
that might be true. Recently, well, I say recently, I guess I've delved into it more deeply, but I've always kind of had this interest is that 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 warrior guys, ancient warrior cultures, there always was this martial aspects, this physicality, but there was also a spiritual and a deeply reflective aspect of their life too,
Yeah.
because they're dealing with death, they're dealing with destruction and things like that. So um, you find that rampant. I mean, you really do find in these many, not all, but many of these ancient warrior cultures. I mean, these guys are stacking bodies one day, and then the next day they're writing a poem, or they're painting something, or they're philosophizing and engaging in dialogue. And like even Socrates, he had been a soldier, and Aristotle tutored Alexander the Great, and you think about the Sarah. I mean, just all these cultures, and that's kind of what I'm trying to develop in myself. I mean, I'm still in the military, and I still love it, and I love the physical component of it. But I think we've lost that spiritual, metaphysical connection that used to be just kind of a given in
Yeah.
societies. And obviously, we don't live in a warrior society anymore, but there is that warrior culture within the military. And I'm not going to say that it's totally gone, but there's not, it's just a hollow shell of, I think, what it used to be. And I think even as individuals, we suffer from that. And I think that would be something good if the military could return back to that.
Yeah. No, I gotcha.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a good perspective. And I think it's funny because that like that spiritual side of thing linked to consciousness, but
Hmm.
it's also like how our culture has become the opposite of that. Like
Yeah.
you think of Western cultures and you think of like productivity, like business, efficiency, and individualism as well.
Hmm.
Like there's a lot of individualism. And then you look at cultures that aren't as Western and you have more community focused stuff, which lends to like you being more others focused, but
Hmm.
B, I feel like there's still some more spirituality that happens when you're living more in community with people because it's
Oh,
hard
yeah.
to take the spiritual aspect out of relationships because it just
Yeah.
doesn't all the way make sense when you just go from a logical perspective.
Yeah.
And
Man,
so,
I agree 100%. I mean, living in the modern age, I mean, it's not that I want to go back to living in grass huts or anything. I mean, it's like anything, right? You gotta look at the good and the bad. You got to be an honest broker with yourself, and you got to say, hey, man, these are the good things about modern society, but these are the bad things that are unhealthy that maybe I need to think about how that's impacted my life and how maybe I could mitigate it. But like you said, in modern society, where the stress is on productivity, the stress is on doing. It's hyper individualistic, and as a result, there's just so much busyness, and with the technology and the scrolling on the news feed and the quote unquote connection, really all it does is separate us. I mean, you got people that are having digital and virtual lives that they're spending more time developing than the connection that they have next door with their neighbors.
yeah,
And really, I'm not saying that you can't interact. I mean, we're interacting through a digital modem. I mean, for sure. But I mean, those things, you don't build a life around that. You don't build a real life around that. And as a result, people are segmented, people are isolated, and we definitely see the results of that in modern society. There's a
yeah,
lot of sickness, there's a lot of illness, there's a lot of loneliness and depression. There's a lot of things that we're dealing with now that you don't find in more shall we say primitive societies, or maybe societies that aren't advanced as our own, because they are connected and
yeah,
they are sharing and doing life together. So yeah, man, I'm with you.
yeah. No, that's a great point. It's a great point. And it's funny how just the last thought on this, and then we'll kind of jump to your
Hmm.
dreams and goals.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny just how simple the things we need are. Like we
Yeah.
don't need like very elaborate connection. We just need connection, or we don't need like elaborate, like it's nice to like go to a 5-star restaurant and like get the food all
Mm-hmm.
designed well for you and stuff. But it's like you don't need that. Like,
Mm-mm.
but we work and we spend a lot of our time trying to get that experience. Whereas, like, really what you need is just the connection sitting around the table with the people, which you can have in a very basic setting where you can have your time back and you can create that intimacy with people. And so it's like spending your whole life trying to get something at one level when you really just need that something at a basic level and you can have it right now, but you're neglecting
Yeah.
to, go get something more materialistic or whatever. And so it just yeah, it just gets me. And we're
Yeah.
not
100%.
necessarily we're not necessarily taught otherwise. Like when you're growing up, you're not taught like, hey, here are some of the pitfalls of trying to make this and that your goals. So
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Well, I mean, from kindergarten even up through college, I mean, you're trained to be a worker. You're
yeah,
trained to be productive. You're trained to produce
yep,
and marketing and social media. I mean, just everything. You're constantly. Always reminds me of that scene. This is an old movie. I'm dating myself, but it's in my Minority Report where Tom Cruise character is
mhm,
walking around, and I mean, he's just being bombarded with ads and advertising specific to him. That's just, I mean, like it's in front of his face. And I mean, at
yeah,
some point we'll probably get there too. And it's like, yeah, it's really hard to drown out all the voices that are telling you to do one thing. And they're not telling you to do those things because it's good for you. They're doing it because it's good for them,
yeah,
right? And the things that are good for you ultimately are the things you just said, to really just maybe peel it back and invest in other people
yeah,
instead of
absolutely.
things. Yeah.
Well, cool. Let's go ahead and jump into your dreams and goals. Tell us about your vision for your life and your business.
Man, I'll tell you what, that one has always been a hard one for me.
Hmm.
I've always struggled with being a planner, being a visionary, and which has really been a challenge as I started my business, right? Because you have to have those things. You have to plan. You have to have some vision or outlook for the future, or else you end up just kind of spinning your wheels. So once I kind of figured that out, I was like, hey, man, maybe there is something to these goals. Maybe there is something to writing them down and taking measured actions. And those are things that I'm having to, it's still really discipline myself on. But I think it kind of goes back to the beginning when you're like, it seems like we have all these things in front of us, but when it comes down to it, there's only a few things. When
Yep.
you really separate the wheat and the chaff, the things that are big ticket items, and that is just developing my relationship with my family and friends. Um, Traveling. I've got to travel the whole world or a large part of the world, but there's still a lot I haven't seen. And to, again, going back to expanding consciousness, having new experiences and things like that, making sure my family's taken care of financially. I even have it down to strength goals and health goals and things like that. So those are things I'm kind of starting to work on. And again, all those goals are, it's not just about having a list just to have a list, or I want to check off these things to check them off. In the sense of, I think of that bumper sticker I've seen that, he who dies with the most toys wins. Have you ever heard
Mm,
that phrase? Kind of silly. I mean, it's a joke, right? But I think even sometimes I've experienced this when I've worked on goals that I'm writing things down just to write them down. And then I noticed that I don't spend any time on half of those things. I'm not
yep.
making any directed measure. So it kind of gets back to what you said earlier. I think it takes time to sit and really reflect about, what do you want? I think most people don't really know what they want. And I think they're afraid to really investigate that, because usually if you want something that's beyond your grasp, that you don't have, it's going to require something of you. It's going to require you to change. It's going to require you to grow. It's going to require you to face fears and a lot of things, and maybe look at some things about yourself that are uncomfortable. And so as a result, we just fill it up with other things instead
Yep.
of facing those. So those are definitely, even for myself, that I'm working on still now, trying to make sure that I am pushing myself and uncovering even those dark corners of my soul. I want to shed light on all of it. I don't want there to be any part of me that I don't know, and so that's, I'm trying to structure my goals to help me do that.
Mm, I got you. Can you tell us specifically where you're feeling pushed right now, or is it really just in these three areas with family and friends, the traveling, and the taking care of your family financially?
Yeah, I mean, I think even with my business, and there's things that I could have done differently in my business. There's things that I should have already have done a long time ago. I mean, part of it is there's a struggle and a growth to get there, right? And then once you get there, you're like, oh man, why didn't this is exactly what I should be doing to grow? Why haven't I done it before? Well, it's like the obstacles, the path type of thing, right? I mean, you don't just come out of the box knowing this stuff. And even if you read a book or someone told you, that's oftentimes not enough. Yeah, it's good that someone gives you advice, but ultimately you have to work and struggle through that thing on yourself. So just in the way that I produce content and not being afraid to engage with other people, to ask, to really put myself out there, even when things are risky, when a project's not guaranteed success, that's just part of being an entrepreneur, and that's or running a business. And those are things that I've just had to become um, comfortable with. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So in terms of just growing my business and just being coming out, doing more interviews, putting more video content out there, struggling with tech. I'm not a tech guy. I'm not from that generation. So it's like no matter how much I learned, it's like the next day now I got a new problem with tech and I'm like, it's just endless, right? So those types of things. I think other and I might be getting too far afield, but just learning to ask for help, man. I mean, I've kind of reached the size of my business where, I've been, the head trainer, the head developer, the head marketing guy, the accountant, the janitor, the
Yeah.
trash man, all of those things. But there does come a time that you have to take on board new people and you can't be afraid to delegate, or you have to have people do things that you're not good at, and that means collaboration. And when you do collaboration, that also entails a sense of where you're giving up control. And I think
Yeah.
that's sometimes hard for people that have started businesses because the business and themselves almost become inseparable, right? Because you've infused your life into this project that it just in some sense can, if you're not careful, become part of your identity and what you identify with. And so then when you come along and you get to a point where you need someone to come on board and take over some things, well, that means they're going to have ideas about where they want it to go. They're going to have input. And you can't just say, well, no, this is my thing. You don't get a vote in that. You know what I mean? If they're coming in to partner with you,
Yeah.
employees are different, but they're coming in to partner with you. So those are things that have taken me a while to come to grips with, but hopefully I'm learning and making some improvements on that.
I got you. Yeah.
So
That kind of being able to lead and like it's like sacrificial leadership, right? Like you have to
yeah.
servant leadership. You gotta like hold the you do so much work to create the vision, and then you start bringing people in, and then you got to hold the vision with loose hands. It's like
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, with loose hands, and you have to allow it to develop.
Yep.
Because I think most people have experienced things in their life where the greatest things that have happened to them weren't things that were planned. Or if they
Yep.
look back and something that just so awesome and they're like, man, I never would have figured it going down like that. And I think when you involve yourself with quality people and the motives are right and the vision is righteous, then those things can happen. But if you get it there and you try to smother it and you try
Yep.
to control it, that's when you start, you start breaking stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, tell us about the skills. I feel like we've kind of hinted at them, but the top
hmm
1 to 2 skills that you need to develop right now to make these dreams and goals come true.
Um, well, I'm doing them. I'm doing them right now. So I've, I'm seeking help right now. I've got some kind of mentors. I found some business mentors that
Mhm.
are a lot more successful than I mean, I have been successful, but there's definitely room for growth. I want to be more successful. I want to really secure financial independence for my family. That's kind of the one thing, right? I've done a lot of things with my business. I've had a lot of wonderful experiences. I've grown into the person that I've wanted to become based on my business that I don't think would have happened had I stayed, as a prosecutor, in my other career. But I needed to seek help a long time ago, and so I'm doing those things now from mentors who kind of can help shepherd me in that direction. And then, like you said, I've also am working on some projects now where I'm letting others help direct it. Because there are things that I don't have time to do all on my own. I can't shoulder it all anymore. My business has kind of grown to the point, so it's a good problem to have, right?
It is.
So really, those are the things. So I hate to just repeat what I had before, but those really are the two things that I identified that I got to do like right now, and I'm executing on those things.
Yeah, no, for sure. I just wanted to ask. I felt like those were going to be the things, but just wanted to make sure there
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah, yeah,
another thing we could tack on there.
yeah.
Now, are there different high impact daily actions that tick the needle forward, or are those the same as well?
Yeah, man, I tell you what, here's something that I'm starting to do, and I'm disciplined in many areas of my life, but I'm not disciplined in all areas of my life. And one of those things are that I've always struggled with is really just planning. And so yeah, I've always been just a more fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy.
Yeah.
I mean, being nimble, I mean, that does give you some freedom to quickly respond to things, but then that long-term planning, that focus, man, when that's not there, you really can go down rabbit holes in the day and waste your day working on items that are not the high impact, not the things that you need to be working on to drive your business forward. It's just busy work, right?
Yeah.
And that I have found, especially the more your business grows, there's always fires that could be put out. There's always things vying to eat up your time. And it's easy, especially if you're not a planner, and planning is sometimes like a painful, it's something you don't want to do because it's not part of your strength. So what do people do? They gravitate to the things that, oh, I got to do these things. And you can easily just waste your day. And when you're a business, well, everybody's time is important, but you understand when you own a business, man, especially when so much is riding, there's no one telling you what decisions to make. There's no one telling you how to plan out your day or what things need to be done. All that's on you. You have to make those decisions. If you make good decisions, then your business gets to run another day. If you make poor ones, and you stack those up, pretty soon you're out looking for a job
Yeah.
because you've run the business down. So that is one thing about making sure that I really prioritize, like, what are the things that are important that need to get done today, but then what are the things that are really going to be moving me forward? Am I spending time on those are the big things that I have to constantly bring myself back to.
Yeah. I gotcha. And so, what are those typical big things for you? Because it sounds like you're at a point in the business. Like a lot of people coming on the show, it's usually like probably the two things you need to be doing are sales and marketing. It
Hmm.
sounds like you're at a point in the business where sales and marketing always important, of course, but you've
Yeah.
kind of gotten that down pat, and so it may not be the number one thing. Just curious, what is? It could be sales and marketing
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, you're right. Sales and marketing, I mean, you're always doing that. I mean, just always. So my business primarily right now would be, I guess you would describe it as service. So I run training events. So they might be private events coming to businesses and churches or police departments, or they could be open enrollment events where we have, civilians coming in for like a tactical firearms class or combatives class or something like that. Well, you know, if I'm the only guy doing that, I can only be so many places. I can only do so many events. And after a while, you can only charge X amount for those events. And so after a while, you can kind of level out in terms of your energy, your time, and then it takes time to market all those things. And pretty soon, you just kind of become a dude that's swinging a hammer, right? you're just going from job to job and you're building houses for other people, but you're not the general contractor that's laying in subdivisions and managing projects and really taking his financial rewards to the next level. And so I am working on now expanding our offerings so that, we have a lot of folks on our email list that are, some in other countries. Most of them are here in the United States, but they're across the country and they're in places that I don't go to. And they're not going to come to me, but I don't have a way to interact with them other than the email. So developing, I'm writing a book right now. We're developing some online courses and just trying to do some things that will create funnels that for people who want to train with us, but they can't come to in person, that can get the training that they want, that they need virtually, and can interact with us that way, build that
There we go. I
relationship.
noticed you said
Yeah.
funnels. Are you a Russell Brunson guy?
I know who he is, but I haven't looked at his stuff, but
I got
I'm aware of who he is. Yeah.
you. Yeah, no, he's a beast. Well, I like the online course route
Yeah.
to reach those people on your email list who aren't local enough
Hmm.
to come to an event. And do you travel to different states to host
Hmm.
these events?
Yeah, I do. I do. It changes year to year. Some places might be hotter than others. Like in terms of like law enforcement, used to go to Florida all the time. It's been a minute since I've been there, but I routinely, especially with the civilian stuff, obviously Arkansas is something I do. I do events in Kansas, Missouri, Pennsylvania, oddly enough, is a big one. And then with the law enforcement, those same states and Virginia. I mean, I've been to almost every state in the union, but not on the regular. So it
Yeah.
just depends on, you might make a really good relationship with a training officer at a police academy, and you're going there maybe a couple times a year in some state, but then those are temporary positions. So then he rotates off and you get a new guy here. And then maybe the new guy, he's learning his job and he's like, yeah, we'll talk in a few months. Right now, I'm just learning this job. Maybe you reconnect, maybe you don't. So,
Yeah,
that's kind of how things can kind of come hot or get cold. So,
I gotcha.
yeah.
And what character trait do you most need to develop right now to make your dream life come true?
Woo, character trait, man. I think it goes back to focus. Just
Mhm.
making sure you focus. I mean, especially when, like I said, I'm starting to seek out guidance. I'm starting to bring, allowing other people to collaborate and do more things. But I'm still, it's still 90% me, right? So then you get to be like the lion against the wildebeest. I think we've all watched those documentaries where you got the lion creeping through the grass and he's got his mind focused. He's set on this one particular wildebeest, but then they start scrambling, right? They
Mhm.
scatter all over the place, and he don't even know which one to go to. And it's very easy, especially when you're running a business, when you're wearing a lot of different hats, to just get distracted by opportunities, even good opportunities. So just trying to weed that out, focus, and even saying no to the good so you could say yes to the excellence,
Yeah,
to the excellent things. That's I focus and discipline in those areas. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Do you know who Alex Hormozy is?
No,
Oh, you should check
no.
him out on YouTube.
Yeah.
He's a pretty good entrepreneur.
How do you spell his last name? I'll write it down and check it out. Alex, what?
Hormozi, Hormozy.
From where was he? Yeah, I'll check him out.
Yeah. He talks about how focus is the thing that kills a lot of entrepreneurs when they're starting out or they're at their lower level. Like he calls it the woman in the red dress because he's referencing the Matrix.
Uh huh. Yeah.
And he's just like, the woman in the red dress gets more and more attractive the better you get at business. So when you're making $10,000 a month, it's like the woman in the red dress is a $20,000 a month opportunity. But when you get to the point where you're making $1 million a month, the woman in the red dress is a $5 million a month
Mm,
opportunity. And so it just continues to get more and more
yeah.
attractive. And so you have to know exactly where you're going, why you're going there, and stick
Yeah.
to your guns. And so he has a couple
Yeah.
videos on focus just because it's so important.
Yeah.
But
I'll check him out, man. Thanks.
yeah, no, of
Yeah.
course. And focus is like I'm trying to think if there was like one thing that if you could be world class at this, it would take you to like just peak levels. And
Hmm.
focus is definitely one.
Yeah.
Patience, I think, is also one. I think if more people could be like extremely patient, like if you had a 50-year perspective on everything you were doing,
Hmm.
I think it would take you a lot further as well. But
That's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. I
yeah.
like it. I know. I know, man. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, I had not thought about that before in those terms, but with patience. But yeah, man, it's just so important, and it's so hard. Uh, You know, running a business, man, there's been so much I love about it. And then there's just so much that just, it's like fighting some kind of crazy wild beast that you can't let go of. You know what I mean? Like you get to this point because there's just so many other things I worry about that I struggle with that I never did, when I was working for someone else. You had different issues then, but it's just like, but you give your heart and soul to it that it becomes this point where you can't let it go.
Yeah.
And I don't want to use the word love hate relationship, but it definitely is. It's more like wrestling than it is dancing, I think.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's there's that struggle component to it. But Heraclitus, ancient Greek philosopher, he said that war is the father of all things. And that is true, man. I mean, everything that is beautiful, everything that is built, everything that is great, it comes from struggle. It comes from chaos being transmuted into order. And so if there's, I don't know exactly who all your listeners are, but I assume they're interested in business and entrepreneurship and stuff like that. But it's like, man, when you take that leap and you start building your own business and stuff, you just have to understand that is that's part of it, because it's through those struggles, that heartache and that pain, though, that you do build something. I mean, if it was, I can't see any other way around it. I don't know anybody else who was successful that really built something that didn't go through that. I think it's part of what builds the character, helps shape your judgment and your discretion so that you can make those decisions and pivot when you need to. It's just part of it, man.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that picture of chaos to order. That
Hmm.
really does happen through some violence,
Yeah,
whether it's like
yeah,
yeah, whether
yeah. Oh,
it's
yeah.
violence where it's like just the emotional violence of like the rage or
Hmm.
the like
Hmm.
intensity that you approach a
Yeah,
business, or like literal war that has happened
yeah,
in the past for
yeah,
centuries. um yeah, I never thought about that piece of life, but definitely.
yeah. I like this, man. We're blowing each other's minds. I
Yeah.
like it. You're giving me, and hopefully, I'm giving you. So I like it. I like it.
No, absolutely. Well, cool. If there were one or two people you could meet right now, and this could be a specific person or a type of
Yeah.
person, and they'd really help you take that next step towards your dreams and goals, who would they be, and how would they help you?
Mm, man. All right. So I've got to be. So if I could make it, so I make up a hypothetical person. Did you
Uh,
say it could be, or it's a real person?
it's a real person, but it could be a type of person. So
Oh, a type of
out of
person.
the
I
eight
got you.
billion people on the planet, 7 billion
I got
people.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't say I want to be Superman or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
So,
yeah. No, no.
okay, I got you. I would really like to meet someone in my industry who has really become financially independent through their business, but hasn't wrecked their personal life,
Mhm.
their family life, that has found some way to do that, but that could also not only kind of mentor me to where I could do the same, but also help me avoid the pitfalls that are so common in life, not just entrepreneurs. I mean, we know plenty of people in the corporate world and things like that, who've shipwrecked their personal life because given too much to the company,
Yeah.
not balance that life. But it's so easy to do, and just have someone that could help mentor me in that would be fantastic. So if you know somebody, go ahead and please send them my way.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'll definitely, if I think of anybody, I'm
Yeah.
curious, have you does the pricing of your services allow you to do less events and meet your target revenue, or is it like you have to do a lot of events to meet your target revenue? Does that make sense?
Well, that's interesting because within the last couple years, I started pivoting to fewer events but bigger,
Hmm.
bigger. So just in terms of what we offer, how we do it. A lot of times, what I'll try to do is block my time. So instead of going up to Pennsylvania for one event, I may be up there for a week and run several events. It just, everything from a firearms to a church security seminar to consulting with I just try to block it in, and I might make my revenue for the whole month in that week, my revenue goals. But now, of course, someone could be like, "Oh my gosh, you made your month's revenue goals in 1 week, man. Where do I sign up for that?" Yeah, but there's uh, there's months and months of work. There's marketing. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes
Yeah.
that goes to make those things happen. So
What's your highest ticket offering?
the highest ticket
What, you don't
offering
have to say
right
the
now,
price, but what type of activity is it?
um, probably at least on the civilian side with the firearms and weapons training, the higher end things would be like a 2 day event. So I have had 3 day events too. They're just kind of more immersion
Hmm.
training. So a 2 to 3 day event that is done at an upper level of training, not just like for beginners. Obviously those beginners, those handgun 101 type classes tend to be less in terms of the admission price. But then once you've gone up 2, 3 levels, where I'm doing the same stuff that I do with military guys, law enforcement, SWAT team guys, I'm just like making it adaptable to the civilian, right?
Yeah,
And those things are a little higher end.
I got you. I got you. Cool, cool. I'm just thinking because so often you'll see people who are like, with that time balance thing. So you'll
Hmm.
see, I'll just say, I'll use realtors. You'll see the realtors
Yeah,
who are selling $200,000 homes, and they're having to turn over, gosh, like 50 homes a year just to hit
yeah,
their
yeah.
quota. And then you see the people who are selling $2 million homes, and they turn over 5 homes a year, and it's just like
Yeah.
they work 15 hours a week. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, if you had a higher ticket thing where it's like you could sell a couple of these and you hit your revenue
Hmm.
goals, or and then it'd be easy to replace somebody because the
Yeah.
systems are clear.
Yeah.
It'd be much easier to get that work-life balance. Like I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of the uh, business struggle, this is Alex Hormozy talking, is like entrepreneurs will, A, we've already talked about this, but tie their emotion into their
Hmm.
business, which is like,
Hmm.
they look to improve themselves from their business. Whereas like if
Yeah.
you have worked on yourself enough that you can, those are two different things. You can start to analyze the
Yes.
business and not be
Yeah.
taking it personally.
Yeah.
That's one thing. But the second thing is like a lot of times it's just pricing. Like, uh,
Hmm.
people they will sell to markets that can't absorb high cost things. And then you
Hmm.
see people who are selling to markets that can absorb high cost things. So like the Gucci brands, like the clothing brands, that dude is like, I mean, hundreds of billions of dollars is what he's
Yeah.
worth just because he sells like designer clothing. Whereas like,
Hmm.
you know, he's making his designer clothing for 10, $15, just like the other clothing brands.
Yeah.
The other clothing brands, like there are influencers that have clothing brands that may be worth, 50,000 to 100,000 a month just because they're selling a lot for
Hmm.
cheaper as opposed to, less for way more.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
just thinking about the pricing manipulation of your business might help you in that
Hmm.
journey to like financial independence. But
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah, just something to think about. As,
Yeah.
I don't know, Alex Hormozy. Go listen to his
Yeah,
stuff
I will. Yeah,
and
I
let
will.
me
He sounds like he's
know
dialed
what you
in,
think.
man. I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah, he's a beast. He's a beast. But yeah, I'll be thinking of a mentor in the industry. And when you mean in the industry, it means they have like a security training organization.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, awesome. Now we're gonna jump into our thriving three. So what is your
Okay.
favorite book, movie, or podcast? Pick one of those three.
Okay. Well, Yeah, as far as the podcast, I mean, I know this is kind of cheating, but I'd say Pearl Snap Tactical
Yep.
Podcast, and really the reason why I think it's because I run it with my best friend and or one of my best friends at least. It's like a brother to me, and we just have so much doggone fun doing that thing.
Yeah.
It's just so much fun. So even if nobody, and we've got a pretty decent listening audience, but even if we didn't, I think we would still do it just because it's so much fun to do. And there's things that I still learn, from him. So, and just doing that. So that's one that I listen to. Um, I think as far as a book, man, these are really hard because I read a lot, and it's hard for me to just say, oh, that's the one thing. But there would be I really love engaging with like the ancient, like the classics, the epics and stuff like that. Things like Beowulf and the Iliad, and I think it transports you to I don't know this just time where it's just an incredible time. I mean, and the things that we can learn from folks who we think about people in antiquity as being so different, but man, you start pulling back the curtains, and you're like, man, that's just they were in a lot of ways. I mean, they're human beings, and
Yep.
they're confronting and dealing with the same things. They're just in a different context. But anyway, to get to it would be the poetic etta, which is kind of a collection of the Nordic myths and legends and sagas and things like that. There's just not just because based on ancestry, I guess maybe why I gravitate to it. I don't know, but to me, it's just they're beautiful, they're raw, they're just an amazing thing, and so I don't know. I find myself getting a lot of inspiration from that.
Yeah.
So I read that, and then for the movie, you're gonna laugh, but I, it's an older one, but I can't help it. It's but let me at least say something in my defense. But one of my favorite movies is from 1982, and it's Conan the Barbarian. It was back when Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's the old one, the Arnold one, where he'd just come to the country, he could barely speak English, and it on the face of it, you could look at that like, oh, okay, it's a 1980s fantasy movie with just a bunch of blood and guts and action and everything. But actually, if you peel it back, it's got a very sophisticated storyline to it.
Yeah.
It really does. I mean, and I think it's everything, especially like men or people who are into that warrior path, man, that or entrepreneurs, anybody, man, you could really identify with this because here's a guy who was in his village that was raided. His whole family was wiped out. He was sold into slavery. I mean, all he knew through his childhood to his adult life, he was just on this grinding grist mill, working. Then he became like a gladiator guy, still a slave, just like killing people in the ring, But during all these times, and of all, in today's day and age, right, we're in a victim culture, right?
Yeah.
Victimhood celebrated. And it's I don't know. It's almost like there's an incentive. Like people are victimized and stuff like that. I get it. I don't want to be not sensitive to that, but it's almost like our culture like rewards you to stay there, right? To stay
Yeah.
there and say, "Oh, look at me, look how I've suffered, look at this," and the society rewards you to stay there instead of to overcome it and to transcend it. And here's a guy that in the movie never once complains, never once feels sorry for himself. It's just bit on his ultimate revenge and rebellion against the world that has just crushed him is to rise above it.
Yeah.
And that's what he does through the movie. He just transcends the chains. He transcends the struggle, and ultimately by the end of the movie, he becomes king of a kingdom. I mean, man, that's motivating to me, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's something that I think we would all do well to really kind of study and emulate. I think, yeah, we all have setbacks. Yeah, are some people's setbacks worse than others? Absolutely, but ultimately, you're responsible to transcend that, and that is the beauty of life when you do that.
Yeah.
I don't. That's what I think. Again, life is about.
I love it. Hey,
Yeah,
I didn't know somebody could get all that from Conan the Barbarian. I've also never
man,
seen the movie. So
you gotta see it, man. You gotta see it, man. I love it. I just love it. So yeah.
cool. Well, what's one way you like to take care of yourself?
Man, I found, especially the older I get, like eating right, sleep, like resting, making sure, going. I'm a little bit of an older guy, so gone are those days of like, staying out till 3 and then getting up at 6 and grinding it. And
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't. I can do that for a couple days and then it doesn't work after that. So just really making sure that I take care of myself, eating right, working out, sleeping. Those are the big ticket items that if I do those things, I find myself that I'm in a better state of mind, making better decisions. If I don't, then the opposite happens. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I gotcha. And what is one action step you can take right now or continue to take if you're already doing it to meet that someone in the industry that is financially independent in the business and hasn't wrecked their personal life?
I am starting to just reach out to people more.
Yeah.
Networking is something, yeah, that I'm really bad at. I have friends that are just like, "Oh, you should meet this person. Oh, yeah, you should meet this person." And then I'm like, how do you do? Oh, I just reach out to them on Instagram, or I do this, I do that. And I'm just like, man, I don't know. I've just always been, I guess, kind of it's weird. I can like, and I can go in front of a room of 300 people and give a seminar and stuff, no problems, like not nervous. But then if I got to make a phone call or write an email to one person that I haven't met before, what I mean? It's just, I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm very shy in small one-on-one or smaller situations. And so network has really been a struggle, but you have to, I mean, you have to leverage relationships, win-win relationships where you're offering something to someone in return for ways that they can help you out. I mean, that's how things are built. And if you don't do that, you're going to get some success, but you're not going to get the success that you want. So necessity is driving me to do that, which is good.
Yeah.
Still part of that struggle we were talking about. So those are things I'm doing now
There we
to
go.
fix that.
All right, we got our final series of questions now. We're going to run through these. What is one limiting belief that continues to pop up in your life, if any?
Yeah, man. Something that I never would have guessed is imposter syndrome. Like, I never dealt with that, going through the military, going into law school, becoming an attorney, practicing, doing jury trials. I never thought, and I had heard about it when I started my business, and I just had no idea that would get me. But evidently, I understand it's a common curse of a lot of folks. And yeah, man, and I found that me too. So that's probably something that limits me from taking more of the action that I need to. But it's like anything, you identify it, start building a strategy to deal with it, and then you should just start executing on it. So it's something that I'm coming to terms with.
Yeah. Do you know where it comes from? It's strange that you got it with entrepreneurship and not with like the army or law school or
Yeah, it's I don't know, man. I mean, so when I was a kid, I I grew up, man. I was kind of a sickly kid. I was a skinny kid. I had a lot of health problems and things like that. And what and a lot of that began to manifest once we left the South and we moved up from a rural area to a city setting, urban area in the Midwest. And that wasn't there was a little culture shock and hard to fit in and kind of stuff like that. And I guess and then I got older and I went into the army. And then, yeah, I mean, yeah, there are a lot of people like, what are you doing going to the army, man? You're going to get broken. You're like the skinny, flat footed, sickly kid and everything. And what happened is, I thrived. I put on weight. I got healthy. I got strong. And I started kind of riffing into that. I'm like, oh, man, I went from somebody who quit everything he ever did to somebody who wouldn't quit anything, even when I needed to, you know what I mean? Because I
yeah.
could just latch on like a pit bull. But I think once I started my business, and you look up to people that are that have kind of made it where you want to go. And I think there's a part of you that if you're not careful, instead of seeing who you are now, there's a part of us that maybe just kind of always look at ourselves when we see in the mirror and we see that person we used to be if we're
Mm,
not careful. And I think that's where I know for me, that's where that imposter syndrome comes in. It's just like, instead of, focusing on what I've become and thinking about this is what you're offering, there's this temptation to just never outgrow that ghost of your past. I
Yeah.
think, I don't know. For me, I think that's where it comes from. So I don't know.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Do you have any
So
limiting actions or inactions that reinforce the imposter syndrome in your life to this day? I know you said identify it, isolate it, make a plan, but to this day, any that you haven't made a plan for necessarily?
I know that is it because there at first I just kind of ignored it, right? I mean, I just kind of just slogged through and I was like, well, it's I'm new in the business or I'm a little nerves or getting out there. And I didn't really realize where it was coming from. I didn't even know what imposter syndrome was until I heard somebody, talking about it. And then, I was like, I mean, I just ignored it because it's man, it's painful, right? It's a struggle, and which takes time and energy. And I thought I could just slog my way through it, and yeah, I mean, you can get some traction doing that, but yeah, I had to really kind of dial back. If I was going to transcend it and really kind of move past it permanently, I was going to have to like come to grips with it and really go back and revisit those things in my past and say that those things, that's not who I am anymore. That's what I've moved from being to becoming. I've become
Yep.
more than those things, and so in identifying with that, those are the things I'm doing to move past that.
I gotcha. All right, last question for you. What is your favorite belief about yourself?
Man, I think one thing I have proven to myself over and over again that doesn't matter what it is that's out there, what challenge it is, that I can figure it out and I can find a way to win.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of myself for that. For somebody who kind of grew up as a kid where someone said you were never going to amount to anything. I had teachers say that in school. To now be of the mind that I don't have to rely on other people. I don't need somebody to rescue me. That when I have a challenge in my life, I can figure it out and I can make it happen, and I have.
I love it. There we go.
Yeah,
Well, Mark, that's all we got for you, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
man. I really enjoyed it, man. I really enjoyed your questions, forced me to think, and yeah, man, I enjoyed it. Really did.
Hey, we enjoyed having you. And is there anything else you want to chat about before we sign off?
No, just if people are interested in this type of training and they want to go deeper, I mean, my website is www.barritusdefense.com. And then, of course, our podcast, Pearl Snap Tactical Podcast. So give it a listen and tell me what you think.
There we go. Well,
All right.
Mark, thanks for coming on the show. Guys, thank you
Thanks,
for
Tim.
listening. If you are listening to this and you loved what Mark had to say, all the links he just mentioned, all that good stuff will be down in the show notes. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you on the next one. And on that note, we're out. All right, guys. So we're back because Mark wanted to answer a throwback question. I've taken this off, but I haven't taken it off the list of questions that I send the guests. So now I'm going to ask Mark because he was really excited about it. So now I am super excited for his answer. Here we go. So, framing this next question, Alex Formosi, who I mentioned earlier, has said that the difference between manipulation and help is intent. Is this the right question for you, Mark? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, okay. And I think his point here is that you're influencing people in both situations, but manipulation is about getting somebody to do something you want them to do, while help is about seeking to understand what somebody else wants and then helping them get there. Then I had this guest on the show, Dr. Alan Leica, who talked about that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. He was saying that you can make a horse drink by salting its oats. With all that context, I want to ask you this question. Think of a person with a fixed mindset
Mm-hmm.
that's not willing to accept help or change, and they hate their life. How do we create an environment around them to salt their oats and help them change their life?
All right. So a lot of pressure now on how to answer this. So I hope I can deliver. But I don't. I thought that was a really interesting question, and the comments, and I do agree on like what you're built up on the difference between manipulation and helping, and all that stuff. But without understanding all of the context, that you, with all due benefit or benefit of the doubt to Dr. Leica,
Mhm.
I would fundamentally disagree with that proposition.
Oh, hit me with it.
Yeah, like I don't think it's our place. I'll say my place or your place, but I don't think it's my place or your place, your responsibility. I don't think it's even ethical to salt the oats, so to say. If we're
Really?
gonna go yeah, it's not. In my opinion, it's not. And we understand that analogies aren't perfect, right? There's a difference between owning a horse that I need to save his life. He's got a drink versus a person that I don't own, that's a
Mhm.
friend that I want to help. And so, I understand that, but I don't think it's right or ethical. And I think ultimately you're not helping that person when you salt the oats. And I want to tell you why. So we ultimately are responsible for our own destiny, right?
Mhm.
Ultimately, as the individual. That includes seeking and accepting help, right?
Mhm.
So you can salt the oats for somebody, and you can, but you've not helped them change. You can, because what happens the next time that they're thirsty,
Yeah, you
right?
salt the oats again.
Because yeah, exactly. And so what you do is you feel better about yourself because you've helped them in this one instance, but in effect, you're just enabling the behavior. And I
Mhm.
think we have a lot of that in society right now where we take it upon ourselves that it's like, oh man, we got to have, you know, I'm all for equal opportunity. I think I want equal opportunity for everybody, but you can't guarantee equal outcomes for
Yeah.
everybody, and we shouldn't. And what happens is we end up destroying people. We destroy oftentimes the people that we're trying to help because we enable this dysfunctional behavior. So that it's like, well, we want to see them make this decision, and they won't. So we're going to make it so that they can't fail by artificially coming in and solving the problem, which it doesn't solve the problem. It just makes them more dependent and makes them more powerless. And it's more likely to guarantee that they stay in that same cycle, right? I've seen this over and over. I've seen it in my own extended family. I've seen it when I was a prosecutor dealing with, the ugly things that happen within our community. And you deal back and you see, you know, the cycles of dysfunction in these people's lives and stuff like that. So I think, yeah, we do want to offer help. We want to try to help, but ultimately, the way that people change is that they have to come to it on our own, and ultimately we can't make them take that step, and I don't think it's right to try to do that for those reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. I gotcha. I guess my counter question to that would be, you're gonna make me late for work, Mark.
Yeah, oh man, I'm
No, no,
sorry.
all good, all good. This is more important. My counter question to that would be, do you think that oats are getting salted anyway? Like whether we're intentional about it or not intentional about it, do you think our influence on people just from interacting with them is leaving an impression whether we intend to or not? And that helps them, that allows them to live in the way that they're meant to live. For example, I'm just thinking about this like when you have kids growing up, like my little brother, he's into drugs now and he's kind of in and out of jail. And now we're at the
Mhm.
point where it's like, okay, you made choices, you landed in jail. We're not going to bail you out this time. Like we bailed you out the past 3 or 4 times. Like it's time for
Mhm.
you to deal with the consequences of your actions. But if you had backed this moment up to when he was 8 years old and he was a bit more influenceable, and if we had paid more attention to him, perhaps it would have been different. And so when I'm saying salt in the oats, I'm thinking like getting back to that environment when he's 8, as opposed to
Yeah.
when they're 25, 30, 35. It's like you're kind of it's forcing people to change at that point is
Mhm.
really hard. But creating an environment around somebody, I think we all react in response to our environment.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think that's what I was trying to get at with the question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and and I agree with that 100%. I mean, I think when I first started, that was my caveat that due deference to Dr. Leica, me not knowing the context and
Yeah.
you know what I mean. It's like sometimes there's a lot of that where someone will say some one thing, and then somebody else will come in and make a talking point by straw man in the argument and take it in a direction. So that's why I came up with that caveat because I didn't want to straw man him. I do agree with that, but I also was kind of looking at the other side of it that I think there's a lot of enabling that goes on in society in the under the guise of helping people,
Yeah.
right? That we need to get away from. But in terms of influencing, yours would be the opposite of not enabling people, right? I mean, it's like, hey man, we're not going to bail you out, you're gonna have to. I mean, that's a form of assault, right? It's like, nope, you're gonna have to face yourself and deal with this on your own. So yeah, I think in some ways we're probably saying the same thing, but from a different direction. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
are too. And I guess my question is, how do you like for the people listening,
Mm-hmm.
because we all have these hard situations in our life where we have relationships and we want better for the people,
Yeah.
but they are they have to eventually make the choice themselves. And that's so funny
Yeah.
because this question has so much context behind it. I just do not
Yeah.
do it enough justice. Like there was this question I used to ask on the show where it was like, what's the one thing that like um causes people to make a choice to change? And
Mm-hmm.
then it was always like extreme inspiration or extreme desperation, but there was always the caveat of they have to make the choice
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
face of that extreme inspiration or extreme desperation. Because some
Yeah.
people, their family dies and they make a decision to go out and help people. And then some people, their family dies and they make a decision to, it like cripples them and they can't go on in
Yeah.
life. And that's
Yeah.
all very individual stuff that
Yeah.
we can't control at all. And that is
Yeah.
unethical to control, which is so
Yeah.
funny because there's just so much context behind this
But that's good
question.
because it generates like some pretty awesome discussion, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the purpose of the questions, right? So I
Mhm.
think I think it accomplishes the mission.
But
But yeah.
how do people parse between, okay, I'm creating the environment to not enable, but still put myself in a position to help and support when needed versus I am now enabling? How do you make that distinction?
Yeah, man, and I think it's harder the closer your relationship it is to the person that you're trying to help, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to come along as a third party if you see someone whose kid keeps getting into dope and going to jail, and they keep, it's easy to say, hey, well, you keep bailing them out, look what's going to happen. But then if it's your own kid, man, it's hard. But having said that, I think you number one, you have to have your own house in order, right? Nobody is going to respect or subscribe to somebody who's saying one thing but not living it. So you got to have your own house in order. And then number two, to where you're providing the example that you have the connection to the person so that they don't see you as, oh well, yeah, of course you're always been the golden child, right? You've always been this person, of course it's easy for you. You do have to have some transparency so that they know, no, if you see anything good in me, or things that I've accomplished, it was I worked for this, I struggled for this, I'm in the same ways that you're struggling with this. And then you have to let people fail.
Yeah.
You have to let people fail forward, or the potential to fail forward. You have to, because that too is part of the process,
Yeah.
and but it is easier said than done, man. That's easy to talk about, but when it's loved ones involved, it's difficult, or it can
It
be.
is. It
Yeah.
is. And like the timeline too. Like I think about this, I'm like, you could be in a situation like this with somebody for like 20 years before they decide to change. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's better to just like better for you, talking about first and foremost having your house in order. Sometimes you
Hmm.
just need to distance yourself or cut them off or limit
Yeah.
communication with them because while it's like, yeah, ideally you would be the perfect person who can bear burdens with somebody for 20 to 30 years before they make the choice to change. And then you're there for that moment when they decide to change. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, we're human. And that's not always the case of
Oh
what we
yeah,
try to
man.
do. So
Yeah. Yeah, man.
yeah.
For sure.
I like it. Well, I'm glad that we jumped back on to talk about this question. I stopped asking it
Yeah,
because
man.
we kept getting a lot of the same answers, but this was a
Yeah.
refreshing one. So
Oh, well, good, good, good. Well, I'm glad
yeah,
I was able to mix it up. Man, I had a blast, man. I really did. I really enjoyed enjoyed your questions and hanging out with you. So thanks again for having me on.
Yeah, no, of course. Thanks for coming on. And now we are actually out, you guys. So again, podcast show notes if you want to contact Mark. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you on the next one.